Good afternoon, Chair Gore, members of the board. Holly Powers, your Assistant Director of Emergency Services. Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the county's emergency preparedness and wildfire mitigation efforts. I wanted to start by thanking the Placer County Sheriff's Office and CAL FIRE Placer County Fire for their continued support in the county's Emergency Operations Center over the last 9 weeks and moving forward in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the county. The partnership and support has been integral in the communication and coordination with county stakeholders and partners. Additionally, county departments that have dedicated staff to the EOC include the County Executive Office, Public Works, Facility Services, and Health and Human Services. I'm humbled by the willingness and dedication of the county staff here to step up and support the response efforts, and I'm very proud to be a Placer County employee. With that, I'd like to introduce CAL FIRE Placer County Fire Chief Brian Estes.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the board, staff. First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for allowing us to be here in person and address you. Personally, as a fire chief and one of the many fire chiefs in our region here, I think I can speak for my men and women that one of our biggest struggles with the last couple of months has been just our lack of personal interaction with each other. And it's been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge. I do want to echo some of the comments that Holly made and really thank all of you for your support in the last 2 months. The catalyst or paradigm shift in what we've seen that the Sheriff's Office, the Fire Department, and OES have done for the public in Placer County over the last 2 months, I think, has been paramount, and the cooperation and collaboration has been amazing. Very, very proud to be your fire chief. We're not out of the woods by far, but we have, I think, led the way in a lot of our emergency response to this here within the county. So one thing I can tell you is that the weather and the fuels and the impending fire season doesn't really care what COVID-19 or anything else is doing, and it will be upon us. It is already at the front door. So I wanted to take this opportunity real quickly this morning to brief you on the events of this last year in 2019 and what our preparedness levels look like for 2020. The first thing we're going to see, and I've got to make sure that I get this going here. So the first thing we're going to see as we go through a couple of the stats from 2019 is that it was far less disastrous, if you will, than 2018. Much of that was punctuated, obviously, by the Camp Fire late in 2018, but we still saw a very, very active and above average fire season in 2019. Statewide, we had almost 8,000 SRA wildland fires. Almost 258,823 acres were burned across the state, and 732 structures were destroyed. There were 3 fatalities directly related to SRA fires. And as we bring that into Placer County, we have 367,000 acres of state responsibility area within Placer County. In our entire unit, which is Placer, Nevada, and Yuba counties, we had 259 wildland fires. 89 of those on SRA were within Placer County. And one of the things I'm really proud of with these statistics is that of those 89 fires on SRA, every single one of those fires was kept at 10 acres or less contained. And that is one of our mission statements as a state agencies is to contain 95% of our fires at 10 acres or less. And I think we met our objective this last year. So as we look at 2020 and our fuels and weather conditions, as we all know, our April snowpack was much lower than we would have expected, and certainly much less than what we saw in 2018. We were about 57% of normal as of April. We're not probably going to see any kind of impact as we move forward from this point on, but we will see, I think, some residual from 2018 left in some of our reservoirs and water supplies, which is positive. Our grass loading is higher than average, but not quite at that critical stage we saw in 17 and 18. One of the big differences this year is that predictive services for generally speaking, the Southwest area, including California, they're not expecting any monsoonal flows. So what that means to us is that when we do see those lightning periods come through California, they are expected to be much drier this year. And that can be a significant point of ignition, especially in our higher elevations. So we'll be looking at that. There's two things I wanted to talk about that I think are really particular to Placer County and I would say are real accomplishments for 2019. One of them is the North Fork of the American Shaded Fuel Break, and we're going to watch a short video here in a couple minutes, but that, as you know, I've talked at great length about that project, and as you know, as we got through our first year and into the second year, we are right at about 91% complete. And we've talked about percentages in acres, but what the facts and figures I have here are really treated acres. Some of that country in the North Fork of the Americas is extremely rugged, and some of the communities that we're protecting are right on the canyon rim. When we say treated acres, that means we've gone through and we can safely say that we've done everything we can for that community protection in those areas. So 780 acres of land has been treated thus far on that shaded fuel break. I directly relate this to the protection of over 5,000 residents in the communities of Alta, Colfax, Applegate, all the way down through North Auburn. At its peak, we had over 143 personnel assigned to this project in some capacity. Those were efforts from both CAL FIRE, California National Guard, the 3 Cs, and all being administered through grants in excess of $2.73 million and facilitated through the RCD here in Placer County. So I'm very proud of the efforts up on the North Fork, and I think we're going to see a great video here in a couple minutes that's going to exemplify those efforts. The other thing that we saw was a decision to staff a fire engine and some staffing on the east side. We saw a dry winter come into play in this last winter, and so we made the decision to staff a state engine fully funded at Station 50 in Truckee in partnership with our strong alliance with the Truckee Fire Protection District. Normally that would not be funded in the wintertime, but we made the decision to do that. And I think it had some real good benefits. One of the things we were able to really concentrate on fuel reduction efforts in specifically Burton Creek State Park in the north end of Lake Tahoe, and in a lot of areas where we had ongoing vegetation management in the Truckee Basin. In addition to that, we were able to become a part of that mutual aid system through the wintertime and provide that assistance to both North Tahoe and Truckee. It also, as it related to the west end of the summit, provided a valuable resource to the Placer County fire stations, specifically Colfax and Alta, because we had that top end, the Blue Canyon and Donner Summit area, with another resource bolstered. So I think it was a really good effort, and wanted to make sure we mentioned that. As we look into 2020 and our preparedness and our staffing levels, we will go to peak staffing in June, early June. On the state side, what that means, in addition to our county fire stations, which obviously are staffed at full staffing all year long, but as we ramp up to our peak staffing, that'll put us at 22 state engines, 6 of our fire hand crews, 3 dozers, and all of our firefighting aircraft available at Grass Valley. In addition, as you know, and I talked about this last year, we were afforded the funding and our staffing an additional state-funded engine 3.0 at Colfax Fire Station, which is a great added benefit for a fire engine company that was unfortunately taken away due to budget cuts back in the late 80s, early 90s. So we've reestablished that. We have the Grass Valley Fuels Crew, and I say it's Grass Valley only because they are staffed there on Loma Rica Road, but they will primarily be doing fuels reduction work into the future on the North Fork project. And then in our aircraft program at the state level, we have the first 4 of our S-70 Blackhawks that were funded in last year's fiscal year that are in service, and that's a huge attribute to our aviation fleet. Specific to Placer County Fire Department and last year's stats, it was a little bit slower, and primarily I think that's due to the fire season, but you will still see that we ran over 13,000 calls for service in 2019, which is an amazing stat. It's a very regionalized, dynamic fire department that I'm very proud to be the fire chief of, and it really ranges from very dense urbanized and light industry to suburban to very rural areas and wildland-prone sections of our county. We had 296 technical rescues specifically in 2019, ranging all the way from the Confluence up the North Fork and including Hidden Falls. Almost 7,000 of those calls were EMS related. And as we move forward and we start talking about enhanced services and moving to advanced life support across all of our fire stations in the county, I think it's important to see that the vast majority of our call volume is EMS or rescue related. We will see, I believe, a continued about 4% increase in demand for services. This year across the region in all fire services, I think you're going to see a downtick. And that is something that fire chiefs struggle with. But what I've told people is while there may be a downtick in the amount of calls, the types of calls, the stresses on the first responders, and what we're dealing with is like nothing we've ever seen before. So there's a trade-off with that. And I will tell you that one of the things I've seen through the last couple months is just a collaborative effort with the county and a trust you can't really you can't pay for. It takes that sometimes a crisis to bring people together and for that collaboration. And very, very proud of where we are with the county, the trust I receive from you as the board, and with my partners in emergency services. So before I turn it back to Holly and to Lieutenant Wright, I'd like to see if we could cue up the video, which is a example and some great work that the county PIO's office did on the North Fork of the American Shaded Fuel Break. When you look historically in Placer County at our fire history, most of our large damaging fires in Placer County have started in the North Fork of the American River, and they have impacted those communities up along the 80 corridor.
This is the view from the Mount Howell Fire Lookout just outside the city of Colfax. The small city is bordered by the scenic North Fork of the American River. Beautiful to behold, but ripe for a destructive wildfire.
Colfax is just a single point that happens to have an intersection of a lot of the risk. And we have had fires occur in the drainage repeatedly. There's a lot of fire history in that area. Yet with that fire history, we still have massive amounts of fuel loading.
It's always been CAL FIRE's primary mission statement, the protection of life, property, and resource in that order. A major wildfire would not only threaten over 5,500 homes and businesses, but would also risk the state's vital Interstate 80 corridor, the Union Pacific Railway, the Kinder Morgan Petroleum Pipeline, the Colfax Municipal Water Treatment System, and electrical and water resources that supply over 500,000 customers. In totality, we have over $2.3 billion in assets at risk.
As a direct measure to protect the residents in the area and these critical resources, 35 priority fuel reduction projects were identified as part of the governor's response to catastrophic wildfire threats. The state of California granted CAL FIRE $1.3 million to work on the first phase of the North Fork American River Shaded Fuel Break. Starting just east of Colfax, crews have done an incredible job clearing vegetation on a steep 2-mile stretch of rugged wildlands encompassing over 1,000 acres. The first phase of a proposed 17-mile shaded fuel break from Auburn to Colfax.
So that shaded fuel break, really what it looks like is it's an open park-like environment that still has mature trees available in it. It's developed by removing brushy material, which we call ladder fuels. They help keep ground fires from reaching the treetops or the canopies. When you get fires in the canopies, it creates a much more volatile fire, casting embers into the wind and causing spot fires well ahead of the main fire front. And that is the most damaging potential to the loss of structures and destruction of homes. It's from ember cast that is thrown from the main fire.
A shaded fuel break essentially is allowing that fire to either drop to the ground or prevent the fire from entering the canopy in the first place. That allows our resources to go in and attack a fire quickly and prevent it from becoming a large damaging fire.
CAL FIRE crews, in collaboration with crews from the National Guard, California Conservation Corps, and private licensed contractors, perform this vital work.
So we're using mechanical equipment that's mowing, we're using mechanical equipment that's chipping, we're using prescribed fire, and all of that requires hand labor. So the laborers that are on site are cutting with chainsaws and hand tools and then feeding that material into chippers or creating piles that would then be burned.
The project will continue, potentially for the next decade, as funding becomes available to complete the remaining sections of the vital 17-mile field break from Auburn to Colfax, helping protect the citizens of Placer County from destructive wildfire.
So I think that shows, regardless in the next 5 years of what specialized funding comes, it is going to remain a priority for our fire department here in the county and for CAL FIRE to remain vigilant out there. And I think the protection of those communities along that 80 corridor is just a real good measure, and it shows our dedication to the county's efforts in fire prevention. So with that, before I turn it over to Holly, I wanted to thank you all again. And answer any questions specifically to my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chief. Supervisor Euler?
So first of all, I want to say how disappointed I am that you didn't show up in your turnout kit. That face mask would have eclipsed anything that we've seen.
I was thinking maybe a level A hazmat suit or something.
That would have worked as well. So maybe I misheard, but I thought I heard you say we're anticipating a downtick in calls?
So
Cumulative?
this time next year when I'm standing up here, we're going to see that this year since COVID-19, we are seeing a downtick in calls for service. Not in 2019, but in 2020, when I'm standing here next year, I'm going to tell you that we're going to probably
for a defined period of time where folks weren't driving as much. And
yeah, but it's significant, and I think across the region, depending on what your demographics and population density looks like, it could range. For us in the county fire department, we've seen a downtick of only about 10%, but I think in some areas you could see as much as 30%.
yeah, I have an acquaintance who owns a towing company.
Yeah.
And his business dropped off over 50%.
And I think it's relative to what you're seeing with private sector and transportation and everything else. But the nature of the calls can be a little trickier through this.
Okay. So when then on that same, you were on slide 7, you show your bullet reads increased demands for service.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you were speaking to the issue of the downtick in the calls. So where are we anticipating the increased demands for service? Is that from this point forward? Is that more on the fire side as opposed to EMT side? Where are you anticipating?
Yeah, great, and I appreciate the clarification. So historically, over about the last 10 years, we have seen about a 4% increase in demands for services year to year.
That's with our population growth.
Yeah, and it's just it's everything. It's changing demographic, it's population growth, et cetera, et cetera. About 4%, and those are relative. One type of call doesn't really spike over the others, but the EMS remains at about 75 to 80% of our call volume. We are going to see this 2 to 4 month period of time is going to have an effect on really specifically on 2020. I think after this passes, and I believe it will, and I believe we will get into some semblance of a normal demand for service from our public, I think we will get back into seeing about a 4% increase in service annually within our jurisdictional authority.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Supervisor Holmes?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. It's been a while. Can you remind me how that field break project was funded?
Yes, the North Fork of the American Shaded Fuel Break Project was one of the 35 priority projects funded on January 1st, 2019 by the Governor's administration across the state. And as you may remember, we had 2 of them, the Ponderosa West Defense Zone in Grass Valley and the North Fork of the American, that were both funded, and both of them have about a 5-year lifespan out of them.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor Gustafson?
Thanks. And Chief, thank you, and thanks for your leadership in the EOC and getting that established and everybody's work there. I'll thank all of you on that. I am interested in the call volume. Does that also reflect all the mutual aid that you're providing?
It does.
And do you have that breakdown approximately for the rest of the supervisors? I know Supervisor Holmes and I've seen the report, but I don't recall it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's right in the neighborhood of about 2,000 calls a year that we are providing mutual aid outside of our jurisdictional boundary lines. And that's really reflective of a regionalized fire service. Every fire department, district, municipality provides some level of mutual aid outside their zones. Placer County Fire Department, just because of the regional expanse of our jurisdiction, probably provides much higher mutual aid out to our partners. But that's a valuable relationship.
Thank you, and it's a critical asset for all the taxpayers of Placer County that you're able to respond and help support some of the smaller districts.
It is, Supervisor, and I guess just to tag onto that, all the fire chiefs, regardless of how the dispatching is administered or how the district boundaries are administered, we all believe in getting the closest resource to the member of the public that is calling 911, and that's the important component of that mutual aid or automatic aid system.
And I think my final question is one you'll probably have to guess at, but I've heard from medical professionals and certainly from our hospital administrators how reduced the number of ER visits there are and regular hospitalizations, and I assume part of that is also reflected in your reduction in calls. But do you have a sense of that people are refusing service or to be transported, or?
Yeah, I think there are
Out of concerns of
yes
the virus.
No, I think that's a valid assessment. Our numbers of specifically EMS transports to hospitals is down. You're still going to have a certain level of your EMS call volume that you're going to be transporting no matter what's going on. But there are folks out there, I think, that if given the decision, may opt to take another course of action versus being transported to an emergency room or going to an emergency room on their own.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the update very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Holly Powers with OES.
Again, Holly Powers, your Assistant Director of Emergency Services. So I'm going to start discussing now some of the countywide preparedness and partnerships we have. I'm going to start with planning first. So OES is currently updating the county's emergency operation plan. This is the umbrella plan that outlines how the county coordinates as a whole during events, also with our stakeholders. Some new aspects in this plan update is we are including all 6 of our cities in the planning process, which will create a countywide plan that allows for unified planning, response, and recovery. And again, this is not a hazard-specific or situation-specific plan. This is really outlining our authorities, references, and how we work together. We also have multiple annexes to our emergency operation plan, or EOP, that we're working on, some of which are hazard-specific. So we have a hazardous materials spill annex, dam failure, mass sheltering, and right now, due to the current COVID-19 environment, we're developing an additional sort of annex on any of those plans that may have that we need to have alternate considerations, such as our mass sheltering plan, which now currently we can't have congregate shelters. So there are certain planning components we now have to bring into the mix to make sure we're prepared to support our community. Additionally, identifying facilities and guidelines for cooling centers and coordination with PG&E and Liberty Utilities on their community resource or charging centers during a public safety power shutoff. So it's an additional plan that doesn't directly impact all of the plans we have. It'll just be one to take into consideration our current environment. We are also in the first draft of our extended power outage plan to assist in the coordination of our upcoming public safety power shutoffs. Purpose of this plan is to assist in the coordination and communication of issues or concerns from local governments and districts as well as our community. Make sure we're supporting those critical lifelines to support our community during a public safety power shutoff. The Placer County Sheriff's Office manages and utilizes our emergency mass notification system, or Placer Alert, and they've had a procedure in place for many years for alerting the public during any type of public safety event. We're working in coordination to develop our public alerting annex to be included under that EOP umbrella, and again, that's more of the reference guideline type of plan, not the actual how-tos. Additionally, the Sheriff's Office, CAL FIRE, Placer County Fire, and OES have been working together to produce a series of responder evacuation coordination plans to assist in the rapid decision-making during an event that requires evacuation. From this planning process, we will be updating our evacuation guideline handouts and information for the public. Other activities from around the county include prevention and mitigation work by mainly our Public Works Department. They are currently under evaluation of all their county properties via contract to develop a phased approach to bringing county properties into compliance with our new hazard vegetation management ordinance. County Roads continues to spray and mow on county maintained roads, and our Parks and Grounds has initiated goat grazing. They've been able to clear about 250 acres in many of our parks, including Hidden Falls Regional Park, Dry Creek Open Spaces in West Placer, our own Placer County Government Center campus, Taylor Ranch Nature Preserve in Penryn, Griffin Quarry in Penryn, Todd Valley Pond in Forest Hill, and Miners Ravine Nature Preserve in Granite Bay. They've also established some new shaded field breaks in 2 of our campgrounds, 6 acres both at Bear River Campground and Todd Valley Pond Park. And they plan to start a 16-acre field break in the Schaefer's Mill parcel in Martis Valley this summer. Additionally, Public Works continues to manage our tree mortality efforts across the county. We've removed approximately 2,000 trees to date. We have another 3,200 trees to be removed this year in 4 contract packages located in Forest Hill, Auburn, Colfax, Soda Springs, and Tahoe. To date, the county has spent $4,519,583 on tree removal. For the additional 3,200 trees we have planned will be an additional $4,325,011. This totals our spending approval budget for tree mortality to $8,844,595. That really works out to about $1,700 a tree, which is running average with the other 10 counties that are also doing tree mortality work under the governor's proclamation. And we're also seeing continued work in the French Meadows watershed, as you guys often hear updates from. The county also has a strong relationship with the Placer Resource Conservation District, who manages our residential chipping program and green waste bins. The RCD is very active in supporting our community and has been providing low-cost chipping to our residents for many years now. The chipping program is grant funded and has seen a year-over-year increase in demand. However, given the significant reduction in jail population, the workforce for this program has been limited, and in our current COVID-19 environment, the RCD is currently using internal staff to run the chipper program about 4 to 5 days a week to keep up with some of the demand. I also wanted to highlight some of the community preparedness that's been going on in the county for the last couple of years. The Placer County Fire Safe Alliance was created in 2001 and has been a collaborative effort between federal, state, county, local governments, and our community. The Alliance's vision is to have an informed, educated, and fire-defensible communities that will result in enhanced protection of lives, property, and natural resources through a collaborative approach in a fire-prone environment. Within the Alliance, we work with our fire safe councils, of which we have 6, and FireWise communities, of which we have 48. I'm really proud to announce that to date, Placer County is 2nd in the state with recognized FireWise communities, and we're actually 3rd across the nation, which I think is commemorable for our residents who have been working very hard in their properties. We have a wide variety of FireWise communities, varying in size from 7 dwelling units in a community in Colfax to over 2,000 dwelling units in the Olympic Valley. The county has a contract to coordinate and assist our FireWise communities moving through their certificate process and becoming recognized. Over the past 4 years, our Fire Safe Council, FireWise communities, in partnership with the Resource Conservation District, have been awarded over $5 million for fuel reduction and community outreach and education from a variety of funding sources, including the Cal Fire Prevention Grant, the California Fire Foundation, the California Fire Safe Council, as well as the Middle Fork Project and others. Additionally, our community members have invested over 77,000 hours of work on their property and neighboring properties. And as well, working home hardening and defensible space, hiring contractors to do clearing, home improvement, chippers, which creates a total investment of over $8.8 million over the last 4 years, which I just think is phenomenal and something that needs to be recognized how hard our community is working. Contact information for the Alliance, our Fire Safe Councils, and our FireWise Community Coordinator can be found at the Placer Alliance Fire Alliance website, placerfirealliance.org. For more information, if a community member wants to get involved in a Fire Safe Council or an Alliance, that's there. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Shane Wright from the Placer County Sheriff's Office to discuss future public outreach.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Shane Wright, Placer County Sheriff's Office. Last time I was here, I didn't have the chance to publicly thank you, the board, Chief Estes, and the sheriff for supporting my appointment to the CAL FIRE Type 1 Incident Management Team. So thank you very much for that support. And I think that it ties very well into painting the perfect picture of preparedness for the county, in that I think it was maybe 2 months later, I was deployed to the Kincaid Fire in Sonoma County. Very similar county makeup, in my opinion. But there was quite a few takeaways from that. That fire burnt up 78,000 acres, and it displaced 180,000 evacuees. Upon return, what did Placer County get out of that? It got quite a few takeaways, some lessons learned, some things that we can do better, some things we've been doing right. I spent 2 weeks putting together a presentation for Placer County Sheriff's Office personnel. Many supervisors, dispatchers, PIOs, and GIS personnel went through that. There were some great conversations about some projects, some plans that we plan on implementing. One of which is a zone system for the county that ties into the mass notification. Basically, take out that reflex time of a real-time incident, getting information out in a timely manner. So as you're probably aware of, the Sheriff's Office is responsible for the evacuations. Typically, that starts, if not 9 times out of 10. We tie in with our fire partners almost immediately. We go into unified command. They provide us with the intelligence and situational awareness that we need to prioritize the areas that we need to evacuate or put a warning message out to. I'm pleased to inform you that I think it was early last year, we adopted the same terminology as Cal OES and FireScope recommended for best practices. Our terminology is evacuation warning, evacuation order. There's also a shelter in place, but there's only 3 terms. It keeps it simple, and it is best practices, and we adopted it. So we're also responsible for the mass notification. We have a few ways of doing it, and typically we use every single one of them. One is our landline system. That's through our vendor Everbridge. We also have placeralert.org, which is an opt-in system, and anybody that is listening or any of your constituents, I would encourage you to have them sign up. It's messaging that they can get straight to their cell phone, text messages, phone calls. It's really one of our better tools. We also immediately follow that up with social media posts. One of the things we're aiming to this year that I think is going to provide a lot more clarity to the people that are evacuated and in the evacuation warning area is more or less a screenshot of the actual Everbridge message through social media to provide them some clarity on what the actual impacted area is. One other thing we have that actually started last year, fortunately we didn't need to use it here in Placer County, but it's a high-low siren that our patrol cars are now equipped with that we can drive through a community, and there's a few different ideas depending on which county you're in, but for Placer County it means to evacuate immediately. It was approved by the CHP commissioner. We're up on all the legalities of it, and we will be using it this year should we need it. With that, I'll turn it back over to Holly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looks like we have a question from Supervisor
Caught me.
Gustafson.
Just trying to run out.
No problem. Do we use Nixle too?
No, so that's that would be our Everbridge. It's just
Uh-huh.
a different vendor, different company.
But Everbridge is landlines, is that correct?
Correct.
No?
Everbridge is landlines, and then with the opt-in, you can also get, with a
Okay.
Placer alert, you can also hit the cell phones, emails, text messages.
Great. Well, I think one of the concerns, at least in our high visitation areas throughout the county, is people that are here visiting don't know what to do. And that's where I know when Truckee has used their Nixle, I get a notice and I didn't sign up for it. So I'm just wondering if that is something we should consider where we have millions of visitors in and around the county who might not be signed up and not know to sign up. They don't even know what county they're in half the time.
Yeah, you know,
Or what state.
I'll definitely research that and get back to you. I think we had Nixle at one point.
Uh-huh.
I want to say that we went to Everbridge, and I'll try to figure out those reasons of why we switched.
Yeah, because it just any phone in the vicinity of a geographic area gets that ping then for an alert to something. So anyway, just a thought.
For sure.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks for all your work.
Thanks so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, this is just a screenshot of our readyplacer.org website. I would encourage any county employee or resident to go to readyplacer.org. This is where you can find more information on how to better prepare yourself and your family for this season coming and any season that we have. Additionally, for more detailed information on preparing for wildfires, you can visit CAL FIRE's readyforwildfire.org, and that has all the detail you would need about home hardening and defensible space work that you can do in your own organization and at your house. And with that, thank you for your time this afternoon. Are there any questions for me?
Supervisor Holmes?
Yeah, you mentioned the chipper program. Did they raise the fee for that? I know they were talking about raising it to $65. Have they done that?
Yes, sir. The fees were raised on the chipper program. They did an assessment year over year of how much it was costing for them to run the chipper program. So it's still a 50% cost share, but I believe it is $60 or $65 an hour. There is still a low-income waiver available that just is self-certifying and can be filled out at the time of the services.
Okay, I just hadn't heard any pushback. I figured there'd be some pushback from them, but
As far as I know, the RCD has not heard any significant pushback on that increase. It's still very reasonable if any of you have had tree work done.
yes, it's a good program.
Very
All right.
efficient.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Gustafson?
PG&E.
Yes.
Fire safety shutoffs. I had several calls from businesses, obviously, about our later item on the agenda, but also concerned that if they don't reopen and then we get into shutoffs again, like they were so damaged last fall with the long-term, especially in the Colfax, Forest Hill area where they
Right.
went 10 days without power. So last I attended a meeting, we got a pretty good update, and there were big efforts coming forward from PG&E with isolating and narrowing where the shutoffs would be and how quickly they could respond and the resources they were going to deploy. I'm wondering if we could have them come back and do a presentation to the full board so that we know going into this next season if that would be possible. I don't know if the other board members would like to hear that, but I certainly need to hear and understand and continue the pressure to make sure there's an investment there to protect our businesses.
Absolutely, I can put in the request for PG&E to come back. We have done work with them already, planning, and I know that they have done significant work on the grid and making the each portion smaller so we can they can more strategically turn on and off our communities that may be impacted. So we actually have a couple workshops with them to get more GIS specific information. So we'll be able to pinpoint within the county with more precision this year than last year who's going to be impacted across. But I will definitely make calls today and see when we can get them on the next board.
I think it would be great to hear from them directly for the board
Exactly.
to be able to ask them questions and continue to pressure more investment in protecting our communities. So, thank you.
And with that, I don't think we have any public comments, do we? No. Holly, I just want to say on behalf of our board, thank you and your team for all the work you have been doing for more than 2 months with the OES being staffed, working weekends and late nights. You all have done a a yeoman's job, and we want you to know how much we appreciate it. Share that with your colleagues. I mean, it's been a challenging time, but you all have just done a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Board members, I just want to give a quick shout out to Holly too. I know she just was recognized by Comstock Magazine as one of the top 40 young professionals under 40. So,
Great. Well deserved.
yeah, she's going to be recognized in the July 20th magazine, and she's one of 10 that they're actually doing a profile on. So you're just outstanding, and I appreciate all that you've done over the last, year and a half that you've been here?
Yeah.
Feels like it's been a little longer, right? But she's just been a tremendous asset for us, so I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Talk about an opportunity to grow in leadership, huh?
Thank you.
Now you need to go figure out how we're going to respond to the Asian giant hornet invasion.
It's on the list, Supervisor. It's on the list.
Solve that for us, that'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.